Tashdele to everyone, and welcome back to the Tibetan Grammar course that we're having. And I hope every one of you had a wonderful break. So today we're going to discuss the difference between the pronoun this and the pronoun that, which is in Tibetan, mingtup. Mingtup. So the word mingtup, ming refers to a name. So ming refers to a name, and tup actually means like a substitute. So a substitute for the name. So we understand them to be the pronoun for some particular noun. So mingtup di dang te. So we have two pronouns, this and that. And today we're going to understand, or today we're going to discuss, so that we can understand difference between the two. And there may be some usage cases that we have discussed in prior classes, in which it is, it seems less significant as a distinguishing between the two. That we may find that in some usage cases that we have discussed in our prior classes, that the pronoun that, which is te, can be used in some cases that in this particular class that we will discuss might be only for the pronoun this or di. So that is something that you might experience. And so it should be understood that the differences which we are going to discuss today are something that is in a more general understanding, but there are cases where this particular pronoun, te, can actually be used for cases that are said to be of the pronoun this in today's class. So before we go to before we begin the actual class, let us begin from the verse. So the verse of dedication, the verse and then the dedication that we have. So the translations will be provided later. Which means I prostrate to you, O great mother of the wisdom light or the wisdom lamp. So the verse here, it states, Nazo Twengi Tromso na Kormotsiki Koi Tangsa Nigmi Sigdale Chawe Jibu Nibo Tsiki Seni Chowai Lenge Langtor Tsikzamo Twengi Tempa Jechuyan Sikdang Juke Temper Ki. Okay, so the verse states that Twengi Tom Chimpona Lale Tsiki Rimipo Seki Duzi Chenang Jaju Nitang Kemishe. Okay, so the verse, it states that not so Twengi Tomsona means the big and numerous shops, or the big market of the big market of the meanings is where the currency of the word is most needed, is used. To say if a person is good or not, that depends on the words. And the actions that has been done comes secondary to it. Sustaining on the food of word, even the good and the bad, the ones that needs to be adopted and the ones that needs to be abandoned are all dependent on words. Even analyzing the truth of the truth of the meaning, this too depends on the words and the one who is speaking those words. In this big market of meanings, some are unable to estimate the value of certain words. When someone is even delivering the nectar, the golden nectar, they are unable to distinguish that from a sound or doesn't hold any meaning. So with this verse, let us begin our class today. So today's class, we're going to discuss the different usage cases of the pronoun this and pronoun that. So Tibetan te, Tidra and Tedra, or Mingsab di tang Mingsab te. Okay, so just by looking at this chart, so this is everything that we're going to discuss today. So the content is not that extensive, meaning that we're going to discuss only the four things that you can see here. So the basis of distinguishing these two pronouns or understanding the different usage. The first usage is on the basis of the person and the things that belongs to the person. So it states da di tang, da di xian la te. So da, which means self. So di will be used for self and te will be used for others. And when we talk about self, we should also understand that anything that is related to the self or the self itself will be addressed with the pronoun di, whereas others or things related to others will be addressed with the pronoun te. Ta nye wala di, ta ring wala te. For things which are near, for things which are in the surrounding of the speaker, the one that is speaking, those things will be addressed by the pronoun di. And the things which are far away from the speaker, when the speaker is either pointing towards that thing or trying to refer to that thing, that will be used. The pronoun that we will be using is te. Tu tada wala di, tu deba dan tu maung wala te. Tu tadawa, which means present tense. For present tense, we're going to use di, and for the past tense and the future tense, we're going to use te. So, and the final one, for things which are apparent, which are clear, which are not hidden, we will be addressing those things with the pronoun di, mingsab di, and te, things which are hidden, things which are non-apparent, things which are not clear, we're going to use te. So we see that the first two are on the basis of the person, meaning that the particular thing or the particular subject, if it is self or related to self, then we use di, whereas we use te. The second one depends on the distance from the self or the speaker, the first person speaker. If it's nearby, we use di. If it's something that is far, we use te. And the The third one depends on the time of action, which we have already discussed. It's called sekap. So it's called sekap, which means the time when a particular action is occurring. So dependent on the time of the action, we will differentiate the usage for di and te. And then finally, it's about the nature of the things. If it is apparent, if it is not hidden, if it's clear, or in a way, if it's concrete, then we're going to use di. If it's hidden, non-apparent, or if it's something that is not concrete, or something that's more abstract, then we're going to use te. Okay, so as you can see, di for self, te for others. Di for object, nearby whom? Nearby the speaker. Te for distant object, distant from whom? Distant from the speaker. Di for present tense, te for past and future tense. So di for apparent phenomena, or things which are not hidden, those phenomena which are clear, which are not hidden, which are apparent. And te for the non-apparent phenomena, the hidden phenomena. And then also di for things which are more concrete, and te for those things which are more abstract. Okay, so now 名册di等田语呢，绝把名照了，绝把名照了， meaning that we have di and te in different type of statements. So we see these in different type of statements, and that these can be used in various statements. We see that these can be used in various statements, and that we see the usage of these particles in many different statements. So, 名册di ni kangsa datang dewe ngopo la juki yu, which means the pronoun this is used with self and things related to self. Things related, when we say related, it could mean something that is related to the self, or it could be something that belongs to the self. So either we're talking about things which are related to self. For example, in this particular, so let's consider a particular case where we're talking about a person that is related to the self. In that case, we're going to use di, because that particular thing is, or that particular person is related to self. Or in other case where we are going to talk, we might talk about things which belongs to the self. Things which are things which belongs to the self. In those cases, we understand that we are using di because it is something that belongs to the self. And primarily, we understand that if it's something, if we're using it with self, then definitely we're also using di. So therefore, the pronoun this is used with self and things related to self. So penna nganchu kangba dini chenpo duk. So it should be understood that when I say self, it should be understood as something either related to self or something that belongs to the self. So it should be in relation, because definitely if we're talking about the first person, we'll always be using the pronoun nga, nge, nga, ku. Or if you're trying to use a more humble approach, you're going to use te. But in any case, we see that those are the pronouns that are used directly for self. And here we're only going to talk about things which are related, rather than this pronoun actually replacing or actually being used in place of self, the first person speaker. So di, it will be used in order to point, or as a determiner for things that either relates to self or things which are things that belongs to the self. So the first example, perna. Ngansu kangba dini chempotu. So how do we understand the statement? It states, this house of ours. So you see that we have the usage of this here. So what does this do? This is acting as a determiner to point towards the house that belongs to self. So this house of ours is big. This house of ours is big. And I've highlighted the particle that has been used here. Usually what we do is that, if it was possible, what we do is that we just write a small moon-like shape and then we place a dot in between, which symbolizes the particle. But here, since we cannot write that, so I've just used the color in order to highlight the particle here. So the first example, nganchu kangpa dini chempotu. This house of ours is big. And like I said, the particle that directly, the pronoun that directly replaces the speaker or the first person is I, or here in this case, our, because we have the sixth grammatical case here, which is the relation case, in which we are showing a relation between it's the owner and the object relation. So the owner is I and the object is house. And so this pronoun, this particular pronoun here, the determiner, what it does is that it functions to point towards the house that belongs to us, or the house that is ours. So this house of ours is big. Now the second example, nye pui zintra dini duntra rela nin ni tsoki yu. Or you can just add nin duntra rela nin ni re tsoki yu, which means 2 days each, or 2 days per week. So nye pui zintra. So here we see that the pronoun nga used for the self, and here it's nye instead of ngan cho. This particular particle cho, what it does is that it makes I into us or we. If it's che, it becomes our, because there is a possession showing here. Here it's the first person with possession, so it is my. Nye pui zinta. My Tibetan class, the, or this Tibetan class of mine, ni dunta rela nin ni tsoki yu, is being held twice a week. So this Tibetan class of mine is being held twice a week. So we see that this particular pronoun, the, this here, as a determiner, what it does is that it points towards the house. It points towards the class, the Tibetan class. The class which is related to I, or the self. So in this case, the class that I, or self, is participating in. So this Tibetan class of mine is held twice a week. So we see that in case when things are related or belonging to the self, we always use the. We always use the as a determiner in order to specify that particular thing or point towards that particular thing that is related to self or belongs to self. Okay. The pronoun that is used with others and things related to others. So we don't use that in order to replace either the listener or the third person. For that, we have other pronouns. We have kerang, ke, ko, kong, morang, mo. We have those pronouns for that. This functions as a determiner to point towards things which is related or belongs to others, which doesn't belong to self. So For example, penna. That class is theirs. So we are saying that that class is theirs, meaning that we're pointing to a class that has nothing to do with us, or nothing to do with the speaker, nothing to do with self. It is a class that is not related to the self or belongs to someone else. So that class is theirs, or that is theirs class, or that class is theirs. That text composed by him has a profound meaning. That text composed by him has a profound meaning. So we see that this text, the text that has been composed, the text that has been authored or composed by this other person, in this case, him, with honorific kong. So we're giving a respect to that person. So this text that is composed by him has a deep meaning. So we see that here we are using the pronoun that in order to point towards something that is related or something that belongs to others and not related or belonging to self. Okay, so the second usage. Nyekor means nearby, in the vicinity, somewhere nearby. So near and around. So kor actually means around or something that's surrounding, and nye means nearby. So nearby things. Ngopo means object. So object nearby. So what do we understand by this? We understand that currently we're talking about something, an object that is particularly object, and this object is near the speaker, the first person speaker. And since this object is near the first person speaker, we're using the or this in order to point towards this thing, to refer to this thing. So therefore, penna ngansu chongsip to yue be di nang nyamang pu yue. So here it is being understood as a nearby thing because it's the village that the speaker is currently. So the speaker is currently in this village, and understanding as an area or an environment that the speaker is currently positioned at, this area could be understood as nearby area. And if we say that village, it would be an area that the speaker is not in at the current moment. So that would be understood as a distant area. So by this understanding here, even though when we say a village, we might have the understanding, we may say, oh, if it's a village could be a big place, a big area, and sometimes things could be far away from the speaker. But here we're understanding the concept of surrounding. So we have greater emphasis on understanding the concept of surrounding rather than the understanding of the concept of nearby. So nearby in the understanding of surrounding. And since the speaker is in the village and the village is surrounding the speaker as an environment, the place that the place where the speaker is currently situated, therefore the lake that is situated in that village, in the village where the speaker is, has to be understood as something in the vicinity, something in the nearby of the speaker. And so we're using this because while we're talking, we are specifying the fact that our village, So it says, ngan su tongse du yue be so di nang nya mang bu yue. So that lake which is in our village, has many fish. And yes, what might also think, doesn't it also have the understanding that since the village is something related to the speaker, that the lake is also something that is related to the speaker? And yes, that is also true. Here we see that we can validate this particular statement for two usage cases. One, that the lake is related to the speaker. Other, the lake is in the nearby area or in the surrounding of the speaker. But currently, the example is emphasized on the quality that it is in the nearby area of the speaker, rather than emphasizing on the fact that this lake is something related, to the village, which is related to the self. So instead of emphasizing on the relation between the self and the lake, we're emphasizing the position of the lake at an area which is surrounding the self. So here we have the shift of emphasis. So we're not emphasizing on the relation with the self, but rather the area or the place where this lake is. And therefore, this particular example should be understood in this way, where the lake is nearby the person, is in the area that the person is currently living. So therefore, this lake, which is in our village, has a lot of fish. And the second one, so this book in our class has a good content, has a meaningful content. And similar to the first example, though the class is related to self, and the book is at a place which is related to the self, but we emphasize not on the relation of the self and the class to the book, but rather we emphasize that the book is at a place which is in the nearby vicinity of the person, which is the speaker. So it is near the speaker. And we have emphasized thoroughly which position this is. I could have just given the example tebdila nauntu yakutu, and then if I would have just written tebdila nauntu yakutu, we have to infer the fact that this book is somewhere near the speaker. But now we have already discussed, but in this example, we have already discussed that it is in the vicinity. It is in the area that the speaker is currently situated, and that the book is in that area, which is which is where the speaker is, meaning that the book is near the speaker, and it is no longer inferential in this example. In contrast to if I would have given an example like heb di nangla, and then we must infer, since di, that is this, has to function to point towards a thing that is near the speaker, so we infer that it's somewhere near the speaker. But here we have clearly stated where the book is, and we have understood that the place where the book is the place where the speaker is. So now let me give another example, which is also interesting. For example, if we would have said, it means that the speaker was at the class. So you see that the fact that the place is related to the speaker comes secondary over here. And this is because we find that if we give the example, like, so let me just write. So let me just take a slide here. Okay. And let me see. Yes. So if I would have written like now to yue be tep te la nang Yapo du. So if I would have written it like this, so yes, so if I would have written it in this way, so if I would have written it in this way, so yuepe tep tela yakutu, which means that the book, so the book, so that book, which was, so it could also be understood as which was, or that book which is in our class, meaning that it is still in the class that is related to the speaker, but now the speaker is not in that class, that the speaker was in that class. And so the relation between the place and the speaker comes secondary. It doesn't become the primary factor to differentiate whether the or te should be used. It becomes a secondary, or in a way, it becomes something that is somewhat a less essential thing. So less essential in what? Less essential in determining which pronoun should be used here, which determiner should be used here. So yes, in a way, it could be understood that the determiners are used here in accordance to the relation to the particular place, but this relation is very secondary to the understanding that the understanding of the distance between the object and the speaker. Okay, so here we have object which is near the speaker. So we say di. If it was the class, our class, if we would have left the class and if we were back at home and then we're speaking, oh, that book that we have in our class, it has a good meaning, which means that we're no longer at our class, that our class is now a distant place. So even though relation to the particular place may play a factor in determining which determiner we use here, but in this type of sentence, it becomes secondary. If the focus was with the relation between the object and the speaker, or the self and the others, then definitely, since we are focusing mainly on the relation between the self and the object, then this relation would take greater priority. But since it is not here, so it becomes secondary. Does it have influence? Yes, but is it the primary influence? No. Okay, so Mingsab Teni, Jebapo means the speaker. So we have already gone through this. We have the word Chebapo, the one who does, the main subject, Chebapo. So Jebapo, the one who speaks, the speaker. So Mingsab Teni, Jebapo Tang, Ta Ringwe Ngopola Chuk. Meaning ta ring means something that is distant, a distant object. Distant object in what? Distant in the position, something that is far away from the speaker. The speaker is talking about something that is far away from him in the position. So if we're using it with objects which are distant, then we have to use the determiner that, the pronoun that. So Mingsab Teni, this particular determiner is used with an object which is far away from the speaker, which is a distant object. So, for example, penna rite gang la yuepe xingdong. The tree mountain. Which mountain? That mountain. And where is that mountain? it is far away. It's far away, definitely, even if we're at the foothill of that mountain, but the top is far away. So in any case, it's a mountain that's far from where the speaker is. For example, the scenario would be like they are going to go to the top of the mountain, and this tree is something that they usually visit. So they're introducing it to someone else, and they're saying like, oh, the tree that is on that mountain. So pointing on the tree that is on that mountain, which is far from the speaker, which is distant from the, which is at a distance from the speaker, which is not at a pointing distance from the speaker, or in the area or vicinity of the speaker. We use te, rite. So here te, that is being used with the noun mountain, ri, in order to point towards the ri. So ri te gang le yue be xing dong. Kong gi nang te zham la yuk chu shi yue. Near Kong gi nang te zham la yuk chu shi yue. Near that house of his, there is a river. So we're seeing that house of his. But here, understanding that, not because definitely, like we said, there is a factor where since the house belongs to him or someone else, that they will be used. But in this particular case, it is used not because of that reason. It is used because that house of his is not only belonging to him, but currently it may be somewhere far away. For example, the people who are talking, the speaker and him and some other person are at the other side of the mountain, and his house, which is the house of the particular person, him, is on the other side of the mountain. And then the speaker is saying that house of his, there is a river near that house of his. So he's pointing towards the house that belongs to him, which is currently currently in the group where they are talking. But that house of his, we're not emphasizing that, we're not using that just because it belongs to him. We're using that because it is far away. The fact that the house is related or belongs to him is, in this case, secondary when it comes to influencing the usage of the determiner. It is secondary. So, for example, we can say, de kongi kangbare, de kongi nare. So, de kongi nare. We're saying de kongi nare, and we might think, oh, why? Because kongi nang, it means that his house, it belongs to him. Why are we using di? But we must understand that when we are saying di kongi nare, we're not emphasizing on the fact that the house belongs to that person. We're emphasizing on the fact that right now we are in front of this house and that the house is near us. And therefore, the relation between the house and the owner is secondary in determining which of these two is being used here. So, this is his house. And why this? Because it is in front of us. And it's somewhere I can point, and we're in the distance where we can easily say that it is near us. So because of the fact that it is in our vicinity, we're using that property, that quality of the object, rather than using the quality that the object has a relation, or the object belongs to others. So you will also face this type of sentences where you will feel that we have learned this rule, but there are exceptions, because in those cases we must understand which is the essential part of the statement. If the fact that we're belonging to him is the non-essential part of the statement, then we're going to put more emphasis on the fact that the house is near, right? So therefore, it always depends on the more essential part of the statement, which determines which of the pronoun this and that, or the determinant this and that, is being used here. So in this case, clearly, it is not the relation between the object and the owner, or the person, the other. Here, it's clearly the essential part of statement is clearly the fact that the object is not nearby, that it is far away. So, and sometimes the fact that it belongs to others, as well as being far away, aligns with each other, is coherent or aligns with each other. And in those cases, definitely both of these combine to give us the reason to use te. So one becomes a more affirmative case upon the other to tell us that we have to use this te. But yes, there will be cases where it will be contradictory to each other. And in those cases, please understand that we have to consider the more essential part of the statement. If the essential part of the statement is to tell us that this belongs to him, then definitely we're going to use te, despite of the distance. If the essential part of the statement has to state that it is near us, then we're going to disregard the fact that it belongs to self or him. So yes, so this will be something that will occur, and that might give us a lot of confusion in the future, because it is true that there are rules, but it is also true that there will be exceptions depending on the nature of the statement. Okay, so Mingtsub Dini. So now on the basis of the time of action. Now we're going to differentiate on the basis of the time of action. Okay, Mingtsub Dini to Tadawala Jukpa. So what does this say? It says that this particular pronoun or this particular determiner is used with present tense. It's used with present tense, or it's used with a time that is currently happening. It is a present tense time of the action. So whichever time period that you want to use this determiner with, it has to be present time. It has to be present tense. It has to be present time. So, for example, bedna taring nimoti chöce cheho. Okay, so what does this say? It says taring nimo, which means today. And to understand that today is still going, so we must understand that today is still going. We're not saying this morning. We're not saying this afternoon. We're not saying this evening. We're specifying the time duration as today. And today is still happening. And since it's still happening, it is a present time. So, tering nimo di chöse cheo. Why? Because the time that we are currently referring to is still going. It's still happening. It's still not finished. So it depends on the time period. You can use a time period. So it depends on the duration that you're using it. For example, if you're just talking about this morning, so this morning, we can say this morning, and this morning might be happening. So the duration of time will be from the sunrise till the noon, or till we get to the noon. So the duration between that we can refer it to as present. And if we're saying taring shokpa namshi taring Tarin shokpa di namshi changmudu. It means that we're currently still haven't we haven't transitioned to the noon or afternoon. Tarin shokpa di haja changmudu, which means today morning is this morning is this morning today's morning or this morning is very very cold. And what do we mean by that? We mean that the morning that we are currently talking is still happening, meaning that we're still in the morning, today's morning, that the duration that is from sunrise till the transition to the noon or afternoon has not yet occurred. And we're still in the time that can be considered as this morning. But if we wrote like Tering Shokpa Te Haja Changmo Duk, which means it is a morning that has already passed. And how do we know that? Because we have to look at the particle. Now we see particle is has even a greater influence over understanding the statement. Definitely, statement has more power over the particle, but particle is not there as a non-essential part of the statement. It has a certain type of influence. It has a certain type of understanding, but the meaning that the particle is going to convey will depend on the statement. Saying that this particular statement shows time. So therefore, the function of the particle will depend on the nature of the sentence, which shows time. So tarin shokpa di means it's still going. Tarin shokpa te means it's already gone. So we see the difference between this. Even though everything else in the statement is exactly the same, there's no difference between any other part of the statement. The only thing that we changed was the particle from di to te, and then we understood that one was in the present and the other was in the past. And definitely it cannot be future, because this is intuitive. Today's morning cannot be a future. So therefore we understand that by the usage of the particle, we have made it clear. It is being made clear that one is in the past and the other is in the present tense. So we see the difference between the particles that actually changes the meaning. So particle, usually you hear me saying that, oh, the particle doesn't have leverage over the statement. The statement has leverage over particle. But also understand that I never mentioned that particles are non-significant part of the statement. They are significant. Therefore we have been learning them for the past few months, because they are significant. But when it comes to understanding the nature of the statement, it's more like the statement has power over the particle, meaning that it dictates how the particle should function, rather than the particle dictating how the statement should function. But I'll leave it to every one of you to decide it for yourself as you examine these statements, to either agree or to see a contrast between what has been said by me and the actual nature or actual functioning of these particles. So the second example, Dilor means this year. Now we see that the duration is 365 days. It's not just 24 hours. It's 365 days and 6 hours. So Dilor nganso Dorje denla Drubpay yin. Now this is something that's going to happen. So now this is interesting. This particular statement is very interesting, because it's something that is going to happen. And then we are inclined to say that it is in the future. But in the understanding of the time frame that we have, which is of 365 days and 6 hours, We understand that it's still in this year it's happening. Doesn't matter, it happens in future. It's future relative. It's future relative to today. It's future relative to maybe this month, but it is present in the understanding of this year, because this year has not passed. This year is still happening. This year is still going. There is a time which is relatively in the past. If we think about, for example, currently it's in June. So if we are just talking about months, then definitely May is in the past in comparison, in relative to the June. But when we're talking about this duration of 365 days and 6 hours, meaning that the 12 months that we have of 1 year, we're still in the current year. We're not in the past year. When we talk about May, it's not in the past year, it's still the current year. So therefore, in that understanding, even though this is something that will be happening in future, in relative to the current statement, current duration of the state, current time of the statement. But when we look at the pervasiveness of the time duration, one may be simply few months, but here we're talking about an entire year. So even though it is relatively in future to a small duration of time, but we are not considering that. We're considering something that is a duration that's the entire year. So therefore, it's still the current year. It's not happened. Did it happen? No, it doesn't happen. But when it will happen in the duration of current year. And therefore, this becomes present time in the duration. So a very interesting understanding, isn't it? Because normally when we think about present time, it should be something that's happening now, but current year is happening now. Doesn't mean that current year has happened entirely. It is happening. It's still going. It's in progress. The current year is still in progress. And when we will reach the 1st of January, the 12 after the 12 a.m. in the 1st of January 2024, then we'll say that it is the next year. Until then, everything that's in between that is still the current running year. And therefore, it's the present time. And therefore, we are going to use ti, and we're not going to use te. Because we might be inclined, we might be tempted to use te. Someone might say, oh, but see, this is something that will happen. Yes, definitely, this will be something that will happen. It has not happened. It is not something that that is happening. Then why are you not using ti? Because in the understanding of the duration that we are talking, that is 1 year, this is still happening. So therefore, we use ti. So, tilor nganso toje den la troyin. And it is not specifically talking about the event in the time that it will happen. It is talking about the duration of the year in which it will happen, and it will happen in current year. So therefore, tilor nganso toje den la troyin. So this is the example in which we are using ti because it's the current time. And then we can have even much more wider duration of time. For example, we can have Dhrup. Dhrup means century. So we can have either Dhrup or Drubpay. Drubpay is one entire circulation of the so we have the Tibetan calendar in which we have those 12 different animals which we use for Tibetan calendar. And when we know that there are 5 elements. So when each of these 12 animal signs, which represents 1 year, makes a round in each of those elements, meaning 12 5s are 60. So in a duration of 60 years, it's called 1 Drubpay. And then we have Dhrup, which means century. So we see that when we talk about Dhrup and Drubpay, then even the idea of next year is still happening. So therefore, it's the duration that matters rather than the very time, the exact time when it's happening. Okay, so Mingtsab Teni tu Debatang tu Maung Balachuk. So what does it mean? it means that the pronoun that or the determinant that is used with past future tense, past timing or future timing, something that has happened or something that will happen, a time that has already passed, or a duration of time that has already passed, or a duration of time that is still not here. So it should be understood in this way. So let us look at the example. Penna longhama tela pui zintra choksong. That means that last year we had Tibetan class. So here we are talking about an entire year that has already passed. We're talking about 2022. So we're talking about a time that is in 2022. So therefore, we're using te. It's not the current time. It's the time that has already passed in this particular example. So it is used with past time. And like I said, it's all relative. For example, if we're only going to talk about days, then yesterday was past in comparison to today. If we're talking about month, last month was past in comparison to this month. If we're talking about a quarter of a year, previous quarter of the year is past in comparison to this quarter of the year. And if we're talking about weeks, last week was already in past in comparison to this week. So longhamate. So we're talking about the duration of 365 days and 6 hours has already passed. So this particular duration has already been passed last year, which is 2022. So we use te. Longama tela pui zinra choksong. We had that last year we had Tibetan class. Duntra jema te nganso. Duntra jema te ngansor lega mangbo yue. That next week we're going to have a lot of work. We're going to have a lot of work that next week. So this week is still going, but the next week is something that will come, that has not yet arrived, that is not yet in present. It is something that will come. And so the fact that there is a lot of work is going to happen next week and not this week. So that next week we have a lot of work. So we see the duration and we understand that it's a duration that has not yet arrived. Okay, so this is quite when we look about the when we think about the understanding of relative to what and which in which duration, how much duration are we talking, then the concept of this concept becomes quite apparent. It becomes quite clear to us, and that some of those confusion that might arise could be cleared with this particular reasoning. We can say, okay, this is this. For example, like I said in the previous example, one might say, why hey, why d? It is something that's not happened right now. And I'll say it's something that has not happened right now in relation to what? In relative to what? In relative to today, in relative to this month maybe, or today. But when it comes, maybe it's something that will happen tomorrow. So it's something that will happen in this week. And this week belongs to this month, belongs to this year. And we're only talking about this year. So anything that will happen in the duration of this year will be understood as an action that has happened in this year. Okay, so now the final one. And this is also quite, it is also quite simple. So, 名词dini la chukiyu, which means the pronoun this is used with apparent phenomena. So the question comes out, What is an apparent phenomena? It's something that is in front of you, something that you can normally is something that you can perceive through five of your senses, the five senses that you have. For example, color of something. For example, I have a blue ball in front of me, and I'll say, "Oh, this is a blue ball." And then let's say I have an apple, and I can say, "This is an apple. This is a red apple." And those are apparent. Those are informations related to apparent phenomena. I don't have to infer anything. There is no inferential here. It's perceived directly by the consciousness of the eye, and the information is directly perceived. It is not something that is more it's not something that is more enigmatic, not something that is more mysterious, something that has a mystic vibe to it or mystic understanding to it. It's not something that we look and we say, "Oh, this might be this or this might not be this. Oh, I have to think about this." It's not like we're talking about the nature of things where we sit down and we think like, "Oh, is it dependently originating? Let me think, what happens if things are dependently originating? This will have this characteristic." For example, this is compound phenomena, so I will analyze it on the basis of the dependence on the parts and components. And these are dependent on imputation. I will analyze this on the basis of dependence on mere designation. So these are more inferential. But things like this is blue, this is apple, this is an apple, this is a table. I see this table has 4 feet. Or I could say, if I taste if I taste something, I say, "Oh, this is sweet." These are more apparent things, apparent phenomena. Or in a way, we can also say these are concrete things, which are tangible in a sense that they can be tasted, they can be smelled, they can be felt through the sensation of touch. They could be understood as a sensation of sound. They could be perceived through the sensation of sight. So those things are apparent phenomena here, which doesn't require inferential understanding, which is directly understood by the direct cognition. So, penna nge lakpar yuepe heb di lama tsongka pe zeba re. This book in my hand is composed by Lama Tsongkhapa. Now we see that this book in my hand is something that is solid, so I can touch and feel either if it's hard, soft, is it smooth, is it rough, right? I can look at the book and see, oh, is the cover brown or blue or yellow or pink or whatever the color of the cover is. And then maybe we can also, I mean, if someone is too curious, they might also want to see what it might smell or taste like. So in any way, we see that those things are more concrete. Those things are something that which is more tangible, which we can see and experience through the more direct approach rather than contemplating on what this is and what that is. So therefore, this book is an apparent phenomena. Now the second example, Kangpe Pudi Karporetu. The hair on the feet is white in color. This hair on the feet is white in color. So we see that we are emphasizing on the characteristic that something is white. So definitely it depends on the sight. So we perceive it directly. So it's apparent phenomena. It's not something that is either hidden or something that is perceived through inference. It's something that is directly perceived, directly understood, and it's apparent and clear. So for those things, we use the or this. This hair on my feet is white in color. This book in my hand was composed by Lama Tsongkhapa. Okay, so so what does this mean? This means that the pronoun that or the determinant that is used with non-apparent phenomena, more hidden, more abstract things things which are more abstract, or things which are not concrete or hidden, something that could be secretive. So we already discussed one of these usage as the usage case from the 30, a particle of te, right? We did that during our previous class. Probably 12 or 13 days ago we did that, but yes, we did that, and we discussed one of those usage case, which is stated in 30, and it stated that that or te is used with things which is also used for things which are secretive. So here it could substitute things. So here we see that the usage is more as a determiner rather than the actual pronoun for the thing. But yes, that also can be understood as something that is secretive, and in that case, te will be used directly. It will be used directly in place of the thing that we're trying to keep secret. Which means the thing that we talked about yesterday. So let me write this. Kasang nge niki she be gecha te, which means te is that thing that we were talking about yesterday, or that thing that we talked about yesterday, which means we're trying to keep it as a secret. We're not trying to make it apparent. It is made into something that is more secretive. So it can be used for something to keep some things more cognitive or more secretive. So for that, we can use this particular pronoun. But here we are using it for things which are non-apparent. So for example, penna. Sem nang to yue be geja te she de yue kyang she tup minduk. That thing which I have in my mind, even though I want to say, I cannot say it. So we see that here we are referring to a thing that is in my mind, which is a thing that is in thoughts, and thoughts are not concrete. These are more abstract, like it is abstract, like idea, right? It's more abstract, like idea or emotions. It's not that concrete. So therefore we are using te, which is that, for this thing that which is in my heart or in my mind. Now the second example, which means that that aspiration. Dredu means aspiration. Myelam means prayer. So that aspirations or intention or aspiration. So let's say aspiration. So that aspiration you have, or that aspiration that is in that prayer, in the prayer, is the best aspiration. So for example, someone might pray with the aspirations that they might think, oh, may all the sentient being achieve a certain state of liberation and certain stage of enlightenment. And this is the best intention, the best aspiration. Or may I be able to guide everyone to the blissful land, or the land towards liberation from ignorance and suffering. That is the best aspiration. But this aspiration is something that is abstract. It is within the prayer, but it is a concept. It is a thought. And so it is not concrete. It is abstract. It is non-apparent. Non-apparent to what? Non-apparent to the five senses. So yes, one might say that, oh, when I hear him, I can hear the sound, and then I can know that he is praying for something good. But then that also will first take one to listen to the sound and then relate to the meaning, and then infer the meaning, or have to understand the meaning, and then say that he means this. So one might argue, like, for example, someone is praying loudly. We can say, oh, but I can hear the sound. So what about the sound? I'll say the sound is just a sound, but you have to use your mind to contemplate on the sound and then say that, oh, this aspiration. But then that becomes a thought in your mind. It was in that person's mind who was reciting, but now it's a thought, that a concept or thought that is now in your mind. So still it's an abstract thing. So we use te for non-apparent phenomena. So these are the four ways to differentiate between the usage of di and te. So the first one is use. So let me just go to the very first. Yes. So the first one is di is used with self, and di is used with self, that is used with things related to self or belonging to self. Te is used for others, meaning that it is used with things related to others or belonging to others. Di for object nearby, in the vicinity of the speaker. Te for distant object which are not in the vicinity of self or the speaker, sorry, the speaker. And in these type of examples, sometimes things may be related to the self, but because of the emphasis on the position of the object, the relation becomes secondary. Okay, so the third one is di for present tense or time in the present, te for future or past tense or time in past or future. And the present and past and future time is relative. If you're talking about the duration of day, then tomorrow is definitely future and yesterday is past. But if we were talking about we're talking about a month, and if yesterday was not a day in the previous month, then the yesterday is still a present time. Okay, and D for apparent phenomena which can be directly perceived by the five senses. And non-apparent phenomena, things which needs to be inferred, or things which are more abstract and not concrete. And so this is the differentiation between the both di and te. And one thing that you will also notice that he here is more like determiner rather than a pronoun that directly substitutes something. But the one that we studied in the previous class, we have understood that te actually substitute those substitute those very noun in the next statement, in the following statement. So therefore, this is the difference in the usage of the pronoun this and that. Mingchap di thang, mingchap te. Okay, so does anyone have question? I can take 2 questions. So does anyone have any questions related to today's lesson? And also understand that now I'm also trying to, what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to make the content of each lesson to be more shorter in comparison to the ones we did. And this is because I want to give everyone time to process and digest what has been taught. And then I think that this will be more efficient, rather than going on talking about many things in a class, and then at the end it would be too much, you know. So this is something that I'm trying to approach right now. Okay, so does anyone have any questions related to today's lesson? And from and here we are done with the particle te also. So we did particle te, and then join with that we did the pronoun this and that.
I have 2 short notes and 1 question.
What?
2 short notes are: first, I want to help. I want to express grateful for today's topic, which a little compensate confusion which we what arise from previous lessons about the.
That's so.
Today is a little easier to get idea. The next, I want to express some emotion about fascinating poetic image that you give us in opening verse. Image about market and money. Very fascinating. I hope later we can discuss it.
Yes.
And now the question.
Yes,
the question is about the word gangsak. Gang, saga, sak. This term.
Yes.
A little confusing. Why? Because first I have idea. This is a translation of Pudgala from Sanskrit, but it's not conjugate with the. Let's remind. We have 4 special words in Zhuang Lingshe. They are gang, chi, ji, and su.
Yes.
And for example, these 4 used in special way. For example, chi shik, chi te, chi le, chi dra, chi chir, and the same for kang. Kang du, kang tse, kang bar, and so on. These special words have the same idea. They take the first syllable and accept the second syllable as in special function.
Yes.
Now the question: how you can explain this usage of gangsak for person if we have other rules for this gang and the similar words? Thank you.
Yes, Lasso. So yes, so the one which you're talking, normally I refer to them as alternative particles, because many of them you will see that they can be used in alternative to some of the previous particles that we will learn till that point. So this will be the last particle that we will discuss in lecture 1. And yes, ji ji su kang. So the very word that goes like ji ji su kang, jida de shik de letter chila ji nyesi tar shin kela ji su ni kang sa kang gyun lao. So su goes for person and place. So ji ji su kang. Chitra means it's a word for, so chi, we say in the actual word is sapatapayat chekyu chi, which refers to general. So something that is general. So general particles. So what general? So chi, chi, su, kang. Chi, chi, su, kang, chita, shik, te, letra, chila, nyesita, su, ni, kang, sa, kang, kyun, lo. Kang, kyun means kang can be used for all of the following. It can be used for ji, ji, and su. So here kang is more like what. But here when we talk about kangsa is the understanding of su here. So su means whom. So it talks about a subject. Whereas ji may or may not be talking about subject as a person. And ji may be talking about entirely a different thing. But su talks about kangsa, which is, so we see that this kang and the kang used as a particle is different. So it says su ni kangsa and kang gyun lao. Gyun lao means for all of the above. So kang can be used or replaced for all of the above. So this kang and the kangsa is different. Kang, so different interpretation. So I'm just going to make an interpretation from the book on the tenant system written by Tongkar Lobsan Chile. So Tongkar Rinpoche Lobsan Chile. He says kangsa can be defined in this way, where someone who is so it could be understand. So someone which is given as an example of a well that cannot be filled. So someone that can the well without the bottom, the bottomless well when it comes to greed. and sapa, which is a vessel in this case, which is a vessel that is filled by 3 poisons. So Kangsa can be understood as a bottomless pit and a vessel that is filled by 3 poisons, as defined by Tongka Rinpoche in his text of the tenets, the 4 tenets of the 4 or the 5 tenets of Buddhism. So this is how normally I also describe Kangsa. But here it's a general term. We cannot take this understanding as the one in the text, because here the Kangsa just means person. That's it. It refers to person, someone that we can consider to be individual. So individual, sentient person. So person. But yes, if you ask for a definition, then I will always refer to the definition by Tongka Rinpoche Losang Chile, someone that is like a bottomless pit when it comes to greed, and a vessel that is filled with 3 poisons. So therefore, so I hope this explanation has fulfilled your answer. If not, then I will welcome more questions.
The image is very powerful and how to say, strong, but not fit in linguistic. It's my humble opinion.
Yes, definitely. When it comes to linguistics, it has to be more secular, you know? Okay. So, yes, less so. So, do we have another question? If not, then do we have anyone who wants to recite, you know? Who want to recite the portion, the 4th, I think it's the 4th portion. Do we have anyone who wants to recite? So if not, then I can continue with this this final lasso. Do we have someone? Yes, the 5th portion. Then please recite the 5th portion. Svetala.
Ramadan, God forgive and gentlemen, we cut from the ground, and the children to make up Kamala Juk, and Fognet and Rani. Kani, Dema Kakatan, Mandration to Duk, Chicky on Children, Shikti Bumra, Chilochi.
That's so. Okay, so see, we came to the alternative particle at the end. So very auspicious. So thank you very much. And now I will be most wonderfully concluding today's lesson by reciting this final verse. So I have only one verse, it seems. So this is Pedap Höser Trogewe Dam Tu Kekya Chimiku Dembe Tsiki Nelunam Simki Tima Chumiku. So Pedap Höser Trogewe means the brilliant light from the lotus. It spreads in all direction. And though it is born from the mud, it will be not stained by this. Its brilliance will not be stained by the mud. In contrast, the mud will actually make it more brilliant. Similarly, the truth that is within the nature of things, the truth that is the truth, it will not, even though one has ignorance within them, when one is met with the truth, when one contemplates on the truth, this truth will not be corrupted by the stain of one's mind. That the truth will be brilliant, and the more these corruption arises, the truth will be more clearer. Meaning that the more of these poisons, the 3 poisons arises stronger, the truth will become more apparent once it has already resided in one's mind. So the example here, the lotus has been given as an example of the truth, which is the wisdom pertaining emptiness, and the mud has been given example as a stain of the mind, which is the 3 poison. So it says that when one has truth within one's mind, doesn't matter how strong the three poison arise, the truth will become even more stronger to subdue it. So this that I dedicate to every one of you with great prayers and aspirations. And yes, so thank you very much for joining in today. And I hope that today's lesson was beneficial to you, as it was so much wonderful for me too, and beneficial. And please revise, recite, and please revise and recite. And if you have any question, post it in the group. And if you have any questions, you can either send it directly to me or post it in the group, and I'll try to answer it as soon as possible. If it takes time, I apologize in advance, because sometimes it may take some time. So if I answer it directly, that means that I had time. If I don't answer it directly, then please have patience with me, and I will answer it eventually. So thank you very much to everyone. Tashi tele, and I will see you for the next grammar class. Lasso tashi tele.